Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar, Top 5 Features to Look For in a Codeless Automation Solution. Our speakers today are VP of Product at Catalon, Young Go, Senior Software Engineer at Applitools, Eran Bar-Lev, and Senior Director of Product Marketing at Applitools, Daniel Levy. So without any further ado, I will turn this now over to Daniel.
Great, thanks a lot, Adi. Really excited to be here today talking about the top 5 features to look for in a codeless automation solution. All right, as Adi mentioned, hi, I'm Dan Levy. I'm Senior Director of Product Marketing here at Applitools, and I'm joined by Young and Eran, as they were just previously introduced. And we're going to be going through some slides about Applitools and then about Catalon. And then we'll go through the top 5 features you should look for in a codeless solution, and then we'll see some demos of those in action. So getting started, I'll first give you a brief about Applitools, the next generation test automation platform through visual AI. So what we're hearing in the field today is that today's approach to test automation is broken, and it's broken for a number of reasons. We keep hearing these same problems across various industries we work with, from finance to pharma to technology and more. Test code's complicated, and it's time consuming to write in a way that ensures quality. And a recent study we did shows that on average, on average, it took an hour to write a test, but it took 2 hours to write a thorough test, and it could take easily 6 to 8 months to write a suite of say 500 tests. And that doesn't factor in maintenance at all. Locators are how the automation framework finds elements in the browser to interact with and validate when a UI changes. And locators often break, causing a test to fail. And since the UIs are always changing, tests are always breaking. And this takes a lot of time for test engineers to fix and rerun. And this is known as test maintenance, and it can consume a massive amount of time. And as your test suite grows, more and more tests are added, and those screens are using more and more locators, and this only amplifies the flakiness of the test suite. And when you need to run across various browsers and viewports, it introduces that flakiness really with like a 20 to 30 times multiplier, because now on top of that broken locators, you've got failure across all your browsers, viewports, and OS combinations, and then troubleshooting those failures and relying on a constant internet connection. It just introduces this new level of flakiness, and the net result of all this is slow builds and aggravated developers, right? Meanwhile, bugs are still escaping into production. And specifically, the type of bug that you see on your screen right now it really is a functional defect, because it's preventing someone from interacting with the continue button to check out, right? But it's visual in nature. So what this means is your automated functional test will say, look for the continue button, verify it's there, and then click it, right? In your automated functional test will run that, and it will interact with the DOM, and you'll proceed to the next page. So by all accounts, your test passed. But when your user encounters this, they may or may not be able to click that button. They may or may not be able to see that button at all, right? So this is a really important concept. So at Applitools, we're here to help teams release perfect apps much faster and at a reduced cost. We replicate the human eye and brain with our visual AI. This looks at every screen in seconds and spots regressions that really matter. So Applitools helps with functional testing, visual testing, web, mobile, UI, UX, cross-browser, and so on and so forth. And the magic in the Applitools platform and at its heart is visual AI. This is the industry's only AI-powered deep learning computer vision that replicates the human eye and brain. And through visual AI comes incredible efficiency, allowing tests to be created faster, with fewer locators, and ultimately more reliable and less maintenance required. We have over 60 SDKs available, so it's not a rip and replace solution. And what we'll show you today is our partner Catalon has created a native integration with Applitools, and that's one of the things that we'll be showing you today. When visual AI is combined with our new ultra-fast grid, tests can actually be executed in seconds versus minutes cross-browser, so your CI and CD process gets instantly streamlined. And this delights developers and ensures perfection across all browsers, screens, and viewports. And We're not another solution making false claims here. This is the impact of visual AI is backed by over 1.5 years of total test engineering time analyzed in a report. And you can see the results of that report on my screen right now, where tests actually can be created 5.8 times faster, 5.9 times more efficient, and 3.8 times more stable by having fewer locators. And the net result with our open-ended assertions are 45% more bugs caught. And we do this across a number of different use cases, everything from kind of that traditional visual and functional regression testing to compliance and PDF document validation to cross-browser and device testing, localization, and advanced use cases. You can see on screen here that Sony PlayStation supporting 53 locales and up to 100 languages with Applitools. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Young for a quick Catalon overview before we get into things on the top 5 features to look for.
Hello, this is Young from Catalon Studio. Thank you very much for the great introductions. So I'm the VP product of Catalon Studio. So I'm very excited to be here today to share with you guys about Catalon Studio and share with you guys that the way that we approach to really tackle the problem of like codeless solution that we have right now. So this is a very quick introduction about Catalon Studio that I want to bring to you guys. So the reason why I believe you guys may, if you haven't had a chance to know about like Catalon and Catalon Studio yet, I think you should give it a try because this is the second year that we have been named as the best automation testing tool. This is from Gartner and is the choice of customer. So also, if you want to know more about Catalon and our solution, you can take a look at the review of the user and the customer on Gartner or other platform. So this, I had to say that not all of like the feedback from the customer, they are on positive to us. But anyway, it's good to have like some negative feedback because we know that the community and the user really care for us and want us to be better. So take a look at that, and I think you will learn a lot about the solution that we have provided. So with Catalon, we aim to deliver not only an automated testing tool, but it really only one solution for you to deal with your automated testing solution. So other than Catalon Studio, which is a tool that can help you to generate and execute tests, not only for like web testing, but also for API, mobile, and desktop testing. So recently we launched the new desktop testing just like a couple months ago, but we received a very good traction from customer, a lot of feedback from them for it to improve. But we really want to have a full end-to-end application because we know that at some point of time you only need the web testing, but eventually when you grow up, you're going to like API, mobile, and desktop. So we make sure that when you with us, you still have it got your back. The second thing is you see here, one of the things that I really feel proud to be in Catalon Studio because we really aim for the good of the user and customer. So we have the solution not only on common like operating system like Windows or Macs, we also have our best to really provide the solution on Linux. Because I know that it's like the QA developers, we prefer to have something dynamic like Linux environment. So we also provide that, and I think it not just help for like each people, but also help team and company to have a way to utilize all the resources that they have right now. So which means that you don't need to switch your environment to anything else to really do with us. So you keep the thing that you be familiar with, and then you go with it. So other than that, we try and we aim to cover a lot of end environments, just like Android, iOS, and Chrome, Firefox, and at Chromium is something new right now. But we aim to have that because for the modern like and the new web deliver, it's very important for you to be tested on the most popular, on the most standard environment. So other than that, we also be available on cloud environment, just like Docker on Amazon or Azure DevOps. So this is a crucial part right now because at the time we had a lot of problems. We need to work from home, so remote working on clouds is very important. So we have that in order to make sure that if something happens, you can also bring all of your work to the cloud. You don't need to be in the office or things like that to make it happen. So yeah, it's my very quick introduction about Catalon Studio, and I will go back after that. But then Daniel will help you to go through the problem that we have right now with like Codeless Solution and how Applitools will have covered that.
Perfect. All right, Adi, can you, oh, here we go, back to my screen. Hopefully that is looking okay. Well, thanks a lot, Young. That's great. And I appreciate the overview of the Catalon platform. We're looking forward to showing everyone the product and integration with Applitools in action. But before we get into that, I'd like to take a step back and think about a question. What are we trying to do as testers? Are we trying to produce as many test cases as possible? Are we trying to run those test cases on as many browsers, devices, viewports, and operating system combinations as possible? Are we trying to write as many lines of code as possible, or as few as possible? Are we trying to learn code on the job at our company's expense because we want to learn code? Are we coding because it seems so many other people are coding? If you ask me, I tell you the answer here is you're trying to ensure the application under test, one, works as expected, and two, that the process of ensuring that that is done as efficiently as possible, ensuring time to market, because the last thing we want is a dated QA process holding up release. So it's important to kind of look at the fundamentals and sometimes take a step back at what we're actually trying to do as testers. At Applitools, we are laser focused on quality and efficiency. We don't agree with blindly following what others are doing without thought to your own unique situation. We encourage testers to think for themselves, experiment, and see what actually works. You might be surprised what you find out. So I'd like to chat about the age-old dilemma, code versus codeless. But before we do, I just want to go into my background for a quick second. Because you've got a marketing guy talking about code versus codeless. So I just want to talk a second. Prior to Applitools, I served 10 years in this space, and I've been in roles such as sales, sales engineering, director of sales, product management, and even more recently, GM of a codeless testing business of a public company. I've talked to thousands of testers, automation engineers, and developers, and I'm providing advice and initial guidance here, but you really must make the ultimate decision on what's right for you on your own. There's no right or wrong answer. There's a lot of great tools out there. Using a coded solution may or may not be right for you. While frameworks like Selenium and Cypress are often thought of as cutting edge, they do lack certain features that can drive efficiency. Now, oftentimes these features are coded into custom frameworks, but that takes time and expertise, and of course, that costs money. If you think a codeless or low-code testing solution might be a good fit for you, you are in the right place, because we're about to discuss the 5 features you should look for in a codeless testing solution. So to get started, the first thing we want to look for, well, element management, but there are really 2 distinct features that I snuck into this one with a theme of element management. In testing, elements are essentially objects in your application. You use locators, sometimes referred to as find logic, so that the automation framework knows where the element is located within the page or app to perform a navigation action or an assertion that verifies a value. Locators are problematic. You all probably know this, but they are very problematic. So when you hear about brittle or flaky tests, it's often due to locators. The logic to find element could be bad. The application could be using dynamic IDs. So the first time it finds the element, it finds it okay, and the next time the ID is different. Or most commonly, the application under test has changed, unless the location of the element has changed within the DOM, and that breaks the locator logic. This leads to maintenance. Test case maintenance is often time consuming and involves updating tests that have broke. And part of the pain is first troubleshooting if the broken test is a bug in the application under test or a test in need of maintenance. And then after you figure that out, assuming the test needs updating, it can take up to an hour to fix broken tests per test. At Applitools, we believe you should minimize locators. Leveraging visual AI will actually allow you to reduce the number of locators and use single visual assertion with no locator needed for an open-ended assertion. An open-ended assertion is essentially, hey, Applitools, take a screenshot here, and through that screenshot, you're now comparing against a baseline, and you're able to check hundreds of different different assertions that you otherwise would have written against the CSS, and this can be time-consuming. But beyond the CSS, Applitools can actually test functionality too, functional testing. That said, there are still elements that need to drive the browser. This is unavoidable. So when you're looking at codeless solutions, you should ensure they have element management functionality. So first off, an element repository. An element repository is essentially a database of elements. So as you go through and record your test, every element that you interact with gets stored into a database. And if you record a different test case against the same page and the same element, that element then becomes referenced to the database. So what that means is if you have 10 tests that all utilize a single element, if that element changes, you don't have to go to all 10 tests to update the element, right? You simply go to the database and you update the find logic to that element in one place, and all 10 tests are automatically updated. That's an element repository. That's absolutely something you should be looking for. And then for overall stability of your test and to reduce maintenance, smart element locators. This is essentially a set of backup locator logic. So you should be able to prioritize a primary locator logic, and then upon failure, it could revert to a secondary locator logic that you've specified. And this helps ensure test stability and thus drives increased efficiency. So element repository and smart element locators are two real time savers when you're looking for a codeless solution. Next up, reusable steps. Think about this. Most applications have a login. Let's say you have 200 test cases behind that login. You write the login portion of the test 200 times. Please tell me the answer is no. But what if the login changes or an element on the login screen breaks? You then need to update 200 tests, and that's a total nightmare. So there's a bit of a theme here on maintenance, right? What I just spoke about with the element repository, now what I'm speaking about with reusable steps. Having a way to reuse test steps, almost like a reusable global snippet, will allow you to easily manage situations like what I just mentioned. Now, instead of updating the login on 200 tests, you update in a single location, saving you a massive amount of time. And pro tip, think about these scenarios before you get too far into creating your automation. Codeless solutions offer some great efficiencies, but it's really important to understand that what features are at your disposal and how to use them for your specific scenarios. And what's great about vendors like Catalon is if you have access to their support teams, you can get answers quickly, and that's another means of efficiency. So just understand the features that are at your disposal. Think through how you're going to create your automation framework with a codeless solution, and don't just jump right into recording, right? So next up is extensibility. Look, codeless has got really sophisticated, but not every scenario can be covered. You need a solution that allows you to extend your test cases as needed in code. This allows edge cases to be automated, and depending on the underlying framework, it can also allow for so much more. And since testers and developers are working hand in hand, having an option to leverage your developer colleagues to help code really furthers collaboration, but also allows testers that want to start coding to familiarize themselves with code in kind of small snippets. This is really a must-have feature, and it's also nice. A couple nice to have includes here. The ability to convert a single step to code versus the entire coded test. This allows you to manage all your other steps outside of code. without the complexity of code, and you just handle that one particular step that has that edge case in code as needed. And then access to a rich framework such as Java or C#. This is far better than a wrapped language or scripting language because you can do so much more with it. Think about things like setup and tear down and database operations and so on. So next up, element timeouts. These happen all the time, and it's so easy to overlook a feature like this, but this is really important. Servers can be slow to respond. Systems can get bogged down, and if your test is looking for an element, having a default wait is table stakes. You should be able to set a global property or adjust on a step-by-step level as well. And ideally, this feature will wait for a specified period of time before failing a test for not being able to find an element. And additionally, you should look for a wait for exist feature assertion, which can be really handy with asynchronous operations. And last, you know what's funny about UI testing, and I touched on this earlier, teams who are only using functional testing tools are really leaving the door open for critical defects to surface. Functional testing is only a percentage of UI testing. At Applitools, we see this all the time. Imagine if your shopping cart button accidentally had CSS that pushed the button off the page, or the text of a button was the same color as the button. You now have a situation that could cost you millions of dollars, right? That functional test is going to pass. Think about it. The element exists, exactly the scenario I showed you with Southwest earlier, right? The functional test is going to find the element, click it, and proceed to the next page. Meanwhile, your users won't see the button, and you'll be in complete panic and crisis mode, and everyone will be pointing their fingers at the quality team saying, how did you miss this? It's also worth noting that not all visual testing is effective long-term, right? Pixel-based solutions can be okay for like very small sections of an application or maybe component testing, but they break down in the long run on large applications. When looking for a visual testing solution, one with visual AI is essential for long-term stability. And in addition, visual AI enables faster authoring and less maintenance by requiring fewer locators and assertions. And more defects caught. Visual assertions are open-ended versus needing to assert for every single style and attribute, which is absolute insanity. It's also worth noting that visual AI is capable of performing functional testing. As long as the functionality is rendered in the UI, visual testing can test both appearance and functionality with incredible accuracy. Applitools provides 99.9999% accuracy. And for those who haven't seen Applitools in action, be sure to stick around for Iran's demo. You really don't want to miss this. So in summary, you've seen the things to look for in codeless automation: element management, reusable steps, extensibility, ability to add code within your scripts, wait for element, and visual testing. There are some other features that you should keep an eye out for. And like I said, every team's needs are different. Things like data-driven tests are a good and intuitive object spy or element explorer. Integration with your build server for CI and CD. Can you author your tests cross-platform? Do you have some users using Mac, some using Windows, some using Linux? You saw Young mention that Catalon is cross-platform in that manner. Integrated or integration with test management. Is the roadmap published? Does the direction of the roadmap align with where you're going, right? Do you need mobile? Does it have mobile? Customer reviews. What are people saying about the product? Go to things like Gartner Peer Insights or Capterra or Trustpilot or all these different review sites and see what's out there, see what people are saying. Are they satisfied with the product? So, there's some due diligence that needs to be done on your end, but these are some good features to look for in a solution. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Young once more for a demo of Catalon, and then we'll get into a demo of Applitools and Catalon.
Thank you, Daniel, for the great presentation. So with my 10-year experience in software testing, I had to say that Applitools really have a very innovative approach to solve the problem. So I think for Catalon and Applitools, we share the same things, that it's not about feature. It's not about, like, in the end of the day, what we can do is to really understand the user problem, and we help them to do their job better. So even though we have different approach in the way we do that, but eventually we try to solve user problem. And the second thing is, we don't see ourselves as an exclusive solution, but we think that we really good complement. So together, we believe that we can help user to deal with almost of the problem that they have with automated testing. So the list is the same for Catalon and Studio. I mean the list of problem, but now I really want to introduce how Catalon Studio really have implement and tackle the problem that the user have, as Daniel just mentioned. So again, first of all, for the element management. So with Catalon Studio, as Daniel just mentioned, we provide a database to really store the element, or we can say the test object. So with the object repository in Catalon, we provide you a very easy way to manage your object. So for people who really had a lot of experience with automated testing, the way that you manage your object will decide a lot of your outcome, because if you cannot control your object, at some point your maintenance job will be a nightmare night after night. So we believe the object repository is the first thing that we want to optimize and introduce to people in order to really control the script in such a way that you have minimized the maintenance and the effort that you spend later. Also, with each item in the object repository, at Catalon Studio, we provide different way that people can have captured the object. It's the expired attribute, CSS, and image. We try to convey as much as we can in order to make the life of our users better. So other than that, we also have like advanced capability to tackle iframe or shadow DOM, which is very common in modern framework like Angular and React. So we also want to capture that in order to have the user can focus on the core business and do not really care much about other things that make them slow down. And again, the object report is just like one aspect of the problem. So we also provide a smart element locator. And that Daniel just mentioned, when you like capture the object with Catalon Studio, we not only help you with like a couple of locator, but we try our best to capture all the things that we can, like explicit that and also screenshots, that in order to say that if something went wrong, we have your back. So when you're recording or spying with Catalon Studio, you don't need to even care about this. We do this behind the scene. You need to care about that. So we cover your back. And the repository and the smart locator is really the foundation for the self-healing. So for self-healing, it means that you can prioritize the secondary option or even the first one to help you when the default locator fail. So at Catalon Studio, we provide the capability in order to make sure the execution can continue even though something happened. So one of the problem that on the automation engineer really like afraid is when you do a lot of things and you set up your CI to run through the night, and when you wake up in the morning, you see a report with a lot of red failure stuff. So which means that the problem here is not about the application had been changed, which means that you do not really catch the bug of the application, but the problem is your code, your script is not really up to date. You cannot catch up with the development phase, and it's your problem. So you need to do it all over again, and you need to tackle a lot of things. So at Catalon Studio, we try to solve that problem for you. So I will show you a quick demo about how we solve the problem with things change over time. So let's say I had a web page, or I have an element right here with the ID like combo facility one. This is the ID of the object, and normally we will use the ID to be the locator of the object. But at some point of the time, the developer decided to change the ID to the new one. They say they don't want number one at the end anymore. They want it to be like combo facility. So normally the ID change, so I think other attribute can be changed. Your test will be broken for sure. So with Catalon Studio, with the smart locator we have, we not only capture the object by the attribute of itself, we also capture the object by the surrounding text. So for example, is here, you can see here an expect locator that identify the drop-down object here, but based on the next by label. And I had to say that it's hardly changed. And even if the label change, it's very easy for you to recognize that it changed. It's much better to recognize the ID or the CSS of the class change. It's very difficult to see that. So this is the way that one of the academic research that we have in our team, and we submit the paper, and it's about how we try to solve the locator element problem by using different techniques that we have. All right, so I will run really quick demo to see you to show you how it works. So let's say here I have a test cases, and for the web page, thing had changed already, right? Which means that the ID had been changed from like combo facility 1 to combo facility. And normally, if we do not really enable the cell healing stuff, it's gonna be a failure. But then with the cell healing enable, we hope things can get better. So, all right, so to take on one step back, you see here we had a cell healing stuff, and I enable the cell healing by default with the some configuration that I put here. And when I run the test, let's check it down. So actually, the default locator failed, as you can see here. Yeah, the ID had been changed. So it is the combo facility one is normal, a good locator. But then we will have other locator to cover that. So first of all, we have the execution to be continued. So we don't want to stop the execution because it should be passed if it passed. And when you wake up in the morning, it should be okay. And secondly, we also provide some insight for you to decide what to apply next. So you can see here, we show the broken locator, and then we have the suggestion that you should follow is that you guys should use this. So if you approve, so the task will be updated. And next time, you're gonna use that locator, and you won't have the problem again. All right. So secondly, I want to share something about like reusable step and that Daniel just mentioned. So for Catalon Studio, we have a lot of approach, a lot of way to help you to reuse your artifact, reuse your step. So we believe that it's super important to reuse the step because we have minimized the maintenance time and effort, and just Daniel just mentioned. If something happened, you only need to fix in one places. You don't need to fix in like 100 places. And we can also maximize the resource utilizations. For me, it's not just like you can utilize the task that you have already, but it also utilize the human, because I believe that one of the biggest problem of automated testing right now, because we do not have a lot of people, skillful people to really implement that, is the problem that I heard over again. So with the way that we provide reusable step, we can have the automation expert to deal with the common thing, to deal with the hard thing, and they can build the foundation. And then the manual QAs, or I mean the junior automation tester, can build on the foundation that the automation expert had built, and they can script in this very easily. So that I want to say about maximize the result. You don't need your team to be on the expert to do that, but you just need a couple of one. And then you can have a lot of people who not really skillful enough, but still tackle that. So there are 3 ways that are really common for Catalon Studio to deal with like reusable stuff that I would like to show you in the application. So first of all, we have the context gate capability. So it's the same thing that Daniel just mentioned. So you don't want to do that login again, and again. So you can make it at a separate login test cases, and in other test case, what you need to do is just call the test case that do on the job for you. Secondly, we have the keywords. So with keyword mean, here is you can convey some common stuff into one place, and you can reuse it all over the place. For example, so this is another approach that we have. So right now is again is a login, but we do not have it at a task case, but it's really a keyword. You can see here we got a lot of keywords. So we have login keyword, and you can reuse it over and over again. So it's another approach, and it depends on the flavor of user to pick the approach that more appropriate to them. Moreover, we also have the capability to really like export all the things and import it to another project. So the reusability capability right now is not in one project only, but it also scale up in multiple projects. So let's say if you can utilize the thing that you be in one project and you can make it in another project, it will help you scale a lot faster. All right, so the next thing here is the ability to insert code. So it seems to be a dilemma here to say that. So because a lot of people say that Codeless is good from the beginning, but when you come to maintenance, it's gonna be a nightmare. So for Catalon Studio, what we believe right here is not just help people to easily deal with the problem from the beginning, but we really help them to deal with all the problem that they have. And we aim not to just provide a tool, but we also want to transform people like manual QA to automated testing QA. And the way the product, the design, really aim to fix that problem. So once we can deal with that, we allow the team with different like skill sets in automated testing can work together, and then the automated expert can help improve the skill of the manual QA through the applications, and eventually they will become an automation expert. So it's really what we aim for in Catalon Studio, not just a tool to make you easier with your work, but also help you become better. So we have just a couple of example about like dual script interface. We had an interface for you to really do manual work if you're not familiar with automation testing. But we also had the interface that help you do on the scripting that you want to, and it's interchangeable. You can do whatever you want, and it got updated in other script. And also we support a lot of various scripting approaches that, let's say that we can play record, playback, or you can capture the object repo and then do scripting, or you can do everything in scripting. So we aim to the reason why we do that, because we think it's just not a personal problem, but it's really a team and a project problem, and we need to tackle the problem on the people in the team in order to solve the team problem. Next step, I think this is very exciting topic to talk about is waveform element. So actually in the waiting things is something very like, because it's not your core business to deal with waiting. It's just a side effect when we try to stimulate something that people can do by machines. So I mean, we aim to take care on the waiting that you might have in order to help you to focus on your core business, and in order that you can maximize your return on investment. Because I see a lot of team already trying to input like waiting stuff in their code, and then it comes to a nightmare when they try to maintenance to change the timeout. It happens all the time, but it's not really a core business that people want to solve. They want to solve the logic and the object element more than dealing with the timeout. So besides the implicit way, like explicit way and fluent way, like synonym that we offer, we also have like something we call smart way, which I will show you in demo here to see how it works. So for example, I will turn off. So we see the default smart way here. I will disable that, right? And then let me run the test. Very simple test. Okay, I will remove this in order to see what happens. Okay, this is just that side. And what it do right here is when you just like click on the page, it will make an AJAX request. And when it return the content, and you click on the another page, it will return something. And as you can see here, the test failed because at the time that we tried to verify the element, the result had not been returned from the server yet. That's why by people, we can see what happened right now, but machine cannot understand because it don't know how much time to wait. And even wait here is so very tricky because if you put too much weight, your performance will be a lot will go down extremely. But if you not like put enough of weight, your test will become very flaky, which means it can pass or fail the time that you don't know. So it's very tricky here to really put the timeout number because actually even you wait for the element, it's not really happen here because you don't know if you wait for a text, it not return is a problem of the the application itself or the problem of the timing. So it's very tricky here. So with Catalon Studio, we have you a much more simple way to deal with that. Is that you need to turn it off. Okay, and run the test. Okay, so you can see here, it now successfully to verify the element. So what happened there? If we will automatically wait for all the activity on the front end to stop before we making the next step. So we wait for the AJAX for the CSS to load before making the next step. So we call it smart way because we try to mimic the way the people see things and act to things. And we try to implement that in the way that you can have focus on your business. You don't care what the site working. You don't care it's AJAX or something like that. But you only need to verify the element at the way you do at human. So it works. So that the way that we try to solve with smart way, and it's about codeless because there you don't need to input any line of code there, any line of timeout. You don't need to do that. We have you covered. And finally, and I think this is the more important thing that I want to share with you today about visual testing. So with the like collaboration work between Catalon Studio and Applitools, we believe that we can help you to provide a very powerful verification mechanism with just simple step and manipulation. So I had to say that we cannot all the time have to verify if things good or not because it very like messy stuff on a lot of things happen on the UI. We don't know yet. But then with the help of Applitools, we have another way for us to really verify stuff And that's why with Catalon and Applitools together, we believe we can be like a one-stop shop platform. So we will help you to deal with almost the problem that we have. So being that said, I also want to run very quick, uh, simple demo with Applitools here. So you can say if you use Catalon Studio deleted version, you can have Applitools integration here. And what you need to do is just like have an API key, which I believe very easy to retrieve from Applitools. And then it just visual some resolution that you want to have. So the good thing of Applitools also, it helps you to deal with the on the resolution that you have. So actually you can input an array here for all the resolution from mobile to desktop to things like that you want to cover. So Applitools will do it automatically. But so for the simplicity of the demo, I would just put one resolution here. But you can also put a lot resolution that you want to cover in your script. Okay, so just run it real quick. Yep, so it's time for Applitools to really capture the screenshots and send to the server for processing. Okay, so we had the test pass. But actually, I did one like visual check-in here. So let's see, if we say that, you can go to this URL to see what happens. So I will open Applitools. If you go to App Test, you will see the Catalon Studio here. And if you go to test result, you can see that one pass thing. So it makes sure that the UI gonna be the same with the last time you do, and it's a very powerful verification mechanism. So for some problem it might happen, you can see here some changes in the UI. Applitools can really help detect that problem, even it's very small thing. A lot of things that have covered, yeah, it's a lot of changes. Even small changes it still can be detected by Applitools. So with like Applitools at another verification mechanism, so we believe that we can have tackle a lot of problems that you might have right now, and we hope that we can provide the solution that help your lives become easier and better. All right, so this all for my demo today. So Iran, can you have like moving forward with the demo for Applitools?
Absolutely. Thanks, Young. So what I want to show you now is once you finished running your tests using Catalon, you're gonna end up with the test results in your dashboard. And I want to go through some basic features that we have here from the test results perspective. But before we jump into the test results, I want to kind of set the base for what is the AI engine doing actually behind the scenes that is very different from the traditional legacy pixel-to-pixel algorithm that other tools in the market claim to do visual testing. So let's take a look at this example quickly. And we can see here that we have a very complex page, complex in terms of dynamic content. Every time you're going to visit this page, you're going to get different stories, different images, different Google ad, for example. And yet this customer wanted to test how this page is structured? Is it structured in the same way over and over again, and nothing breaks whenever they push an update? So if they were using any traditional tool in the market, they would be using pixel to pixel, like I mentioned earlier, or as we call it at Applitools, exact. And let's see what this pixel to pixel tool would look like when processing those two screenshots together. So on the left, we have the baseline, what our expected result is, and on the right, we have the checkpoint, the current test we just ran. And we see everything that's highlighted in pink is basically a mismatch between those two images. And now most of the elements here are, it makes sense that it's different. There is nothing special here. There are different images and different stories, different ad. However, the logo and the menu are also highlighted in pink. And this is basically not a response we're expecting when we're comparing those two screenshots. So to handle that, let's see what the algorithm sees. So I'm going to put them one on top of the other, and I've removed the highlights so we can actually see those images clearly. And I'm going to toggle back and forth. And we see this pixel shift going right and left. And this pixel shift is all it takes to throw off a pixel to pixel algorithm. Now, when we're looking at the big picture, you can't put a threshold big enough to make this test pass, because the majority of those two images is different by definition, different content. So for that, we implemented our first AI algorithm called Strict. And Strict emulates the human eye and brain and processes those two screenshots the same way as you show it to a person who is evaluating or comparing those two screenshots. And you can see that this person would not notice or would not care about the pixel shift at the menu or at these components on the top, or at the logo, or at the top stories title, for example. But a human definitely would notice all the rest of the elements on the page because it's different content. And to handle those elements that have dynamic content, we implemented our layout algorithm, which reverse engineers the page based on the image only, doesn't look at the code, and understands what component exists on the page, where they belong, if anything needs to move around, what is flexible enough. It's looking for patterns and symmetries, and then it makes a decision whether this is a pass or a fail. And in this case, we have a match. And that's because in terms of structure, the page is intact. Now, it's important to understand that layout is not ignore. We're not ignoring dynamic content elements. So if this element is missing, or if we have an extra image here, or missing Google ad image, all these will be picked up by the engine, highlighting it as a mismatch. Let me show you a couple of examples where layout actually helps. So here we're testing the Twitter feed, and this is, as you know, is a very dynamic feed, even in terms of layout. Every tweet can have different structure to it. It can have an animated GIF, a video, an image. It could be a retweet. It could be a sponsored tweet. Pretty much infinite combinations of how a tweet can look like, because it's all consumer driven. So when we tweet, we basically generate random layouts over and over again. So using a pixel to pixel is meaningless here, and even strict is impossible because everything is different by definition. But with layout, when we switch to our layout algorithm, and whatever I'm showing here can be done from Catalon, like Yang showed there as part of the configuration. Here we see one element that's highlighted, and this paragraph basically wrapped around the icon, where the AI realized that all the text should be aligned right next to those icons. And here at the bottom left, TechCrunch logo is missing, so that's also highlighted. So those two elements can be picked up easily with layout when we're validating dynamic content. Now, there's no one algorithm fits all. We understand that, and in order to handle that, we have regions that you can apply to different areas of the image, and this also can be done from the code and not manually here. and I can add those regions around every element on the page that has dynamic content. So this is like a Yahoo Finance app, and this one is native as well, because like we mentioned earlier, we can handle native and web as well. And I'm applying the layout region around elements or around areas where I have dynamic content that I need to validate the structure, but don't care about the actual values. And when I'm cleaning up my tests, I can see that one element is still highlighted in pink, and that's this region right here. So by using a combination of strict to run on my full page, because I want to catch every small thing like a typo or a missing icon, and applying layout region around elements where I have dynamic content, I actually can now zoom in and see the single element that's actually broken here. Now, this could be a CSS issue where someone changed the text color to be the same as the background color, or this text box is actually somewhere here in this white margin. And it's very important to understand that a functional test would normally not catch such a bug, because this data could be here and no one is validating the color, or this data could be here and no one is validating the position, because it's impossible to write functional tests that will cover 100% of your page. It's just not going to be scalable or even stable enough to survive multiple test runs. So this is why we handpick a couple of elements on the page, focus on them, and only assert them. But with visual testing, when you grab a full page screenshot and we stitch it nicely for long pages, handle all the floating elements nicely, this gives you 100% coverage of your application. Now, to tie back to the demo Jan was showing, the commerce site here. So as you can see, we grabbed the full page screenshot of this e-commerce store, and the second time I ran it against a different product, and we can see that we're only highlighting the elements that are different here. And basically it's a different color of the image or a different brand of that kind of outfit. And if I'm applying my layout region on that page, all the pink elements will be gone, because now we care about the structure of the page and not the content. So I don't care if this is a blue t-shirt versus a red hoodie, for example. Now, another cool feature here that's a time saver for developers is the ability to see what's broken behind the scenes. So when I see this mismatch, I'm wondering what could have caused this change. So for that, we have our root cause analysis option, where you can click on an element and see exactly what's broken in the CSS behind. And here we see that there's just a different source for that image. And if we're clicking on, this element, for example, we can see, click on it, sorry, we can see that it was Happy Ninja, but now it's Patient Ninja. And again, it's coming from this CSS element. So this is another time saver. We're short on time, and I want to leave some room for questions here. So Dan, do you want to take the lead here?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. So while Dan is, I see that he changed his, he's now the presenter. So we are out of time, but we will take some questions. And you have loads of questions. I see them all. Both the Applitools team and the Catalon team will answer all of your questions via email. So don't worry, and feel free to ask any more questions that you have. We will address them. But right now we'll just take just a few. I know we are over time. We'll just take a few before we end the session. So the first question is for Catalon. The codeless approach usually helps scripting faster, but will need much higher maintenance effort. How can Catalon Studio deal with maintenance matters?
Thank you, Adi. This is a great question that we have, because I have to say that we keep thinking about this all the time when we work on Catalon Studio and and we want to make it better. So there are two things that I want to share here. First of all, with what we have right now, the way that we have to deal with the maintenance efforts is that we try to make, first of all, to capture the object as much as we can. So we believe that when we do that, as you can see already with self-healing, it will help you dramatically reduce the maintenance efforts with the insight that we provide, with the suggestion that we give you when we have the default locator fails. And also, you see, for smart ad part, we try to mitigate the problem that you have with waiting, and we solve it by ourselves. So we can say that codeless, but when we have a standard that we can help deal with like 99% with the problem, we believe that it will help you really better for handle with maintenance than even your codeful solution. And secondly, for the long term ahead, we're thinking about applying like AI, ML into like automatically test generation. So for now, we will not deal with maintenance anymore, but then we deal with like, okay, we will help you to generate the test case with no cost. We do it automatically. So it's what we aim for. And when you have on the test generate automatically, maintenance will be no more. So in short term, what we have right now is to help you to have the best grip that we can. And in the long term, we will help you to generate script by ourselves. So what we aim to do right now and in the future to deal with the problem.
Great. So next question for Dan, and of course, if Young, if you want to answer after him, then please feel free. We got a lot of questions about cross-browser testing. So how can you integrate cross-browser testing to Applitools with Catalon? So Dan, if you can take that away.
Sure. So, there are several approaches to cross-browser testing. So, if you're testing against modern browsers, we'd recommend using the ultrafast grid. And the reason is modern browsers are dealing with JavaScript in virtually the same way. So, if you run a test in one browser, like Chrome, and then you try to run it in Safari, and then you run it in Firefox, these browsers are all performing essentially the same. And the differences are in how things are rendered, right? Rendering is a bit more subjective. So running visual testing cross-browser really does make sense and provides you far better coverage. And that's how our ultra-fast grid works. This is really brand new cross-browser technology that Applitools has implemented. That would be my suggestion for cross-browser testing. Now, if you have situations where you need to test against older versions of IE or some legacy browsers, JavaScript will perform different in those browsers, and it is important to run your functional tests there. And of course, you can integrate with other cloud providers for that. But if you're really testing against modern browsers, leveraging Applitools ultrafast grid, which Catalon does have support for, is the proper approach. And I'll let Eran add any additional commentary there, and Young as well.
Yeah, you're correct. In terms of the specific Catalon integration, Young can probably pull up his screen again. It's part of the settings of your test. And there's also an option to do it using any of our SDKs in terms of configuring it. And it's important to understand you run it once. Traditional cross-browser testing, you run your test over and over again against different browsers or different versions of the browsers that you want to test against. But with Applitools Visual Grid, you run it once, we grab everything we need for the testing, and then we render it across the browsers that you set it up for, regardless if you set it up with Catalon or directly through our SDKs.
Right, Aaron. So I think the way that Applitool really tackled the problem is really smart. So instead of trying to make on the browser the same, so in Applitool integration, if you run the test in different browser, you will see that it's gonna be different baseline for different environments. So instead of trying to solve very difficult problem, it's just Applitool way to make it into smaller problem. So let's say if you run in one browser, we can make it happen on browsers, and we make baseline for on the browser. And next time you do that, it's gonna be checked with the specific environment, with the specific browser that you run with. So it have really deal with the different in different browser, and it also give you very confident to really say that it's already covered in other environment. So
Yep, correct.
Great. So unfortunately, that's all the time that we have for today. Not only all the time, we went a little bit over time, and I apologize for that. I want to thank everyone that joined us today for this live session, and of course, thank our speakers, Jan, Yaron, and Danielle. A quick reminder before I let them say their goodbyes, the link to the recording of this session and the slide deck will be emailed to you by end of day Monday, and I do hope to see you all at our next event. So thank you.
Thank you all.
thank you, guys.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good one.